is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1996 romantic war drama titled The English Patient. Now, The English Patient runs for 2 hours and 42 minutes long. It is directed by one of the great, or probably maybe one of the last of the great classic directors, Anthony Minghella. It was produced by Zal Zainetz. The script was written by Anthony Minghella. It is based on the novel The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. The score was done by Gabriel Yared. The cinematography by John Seal. And it was edited by Walter Murch. And the stars of the movie are Ralph Fiennes, Juliette Binoche, Willem Dafoe, Kristen Scott Thomas, Naveen Andrews, Colin Firth, Julian Wadham, and Jürgen Prochnow. Okay, so there's been kind of like a few things that have been kind of missing in the film community. Many filmmakers just seem to have lost the true meaning of effective, powerfully executed love stories delivered with both passion and depth. But under the direction of the late Anthony Minghella, he directed such other great movies like The Talented Mr. Ripley, amongst many others. The English Patient truly had resurrected the romantic drama by not just being dependent on the direction itself, although Minghella did win the Oscar for Best Director, but a clever script also done by Anthony Minghella, undeniable performances all around, including Juliette Binoche, who was the winner for Best Supporting Actress in this movie, and pitch perfect dialogue. There's also flawless camera work that has sweeping levels of erotica mixed with an emotional connectivity that you don't see a lot in movies. Sure, it's grandeur in terms of melodramatic intentions, but it does a service to the movie as opposed to just rubbing it in our faces, which definitely makes it effective instead of manipulative. And I'm always for things like that. Put in the rightful hands of writer-director Anthony Minghella, based on the award-winning novel by Michael Ondaatje. Minghella definitely brings the romance between, even though he is regarded as an English patient, he actually is Hungarian. His name is Count Laszlo D. Almasi, played by Ralph Fiennes, and Catherine Clifton, played by Kristen Scott Thomas. They bring this romance between these two to life quite naturally. It feels like they are living the parts and not just memorizing their lines. Like when Kevin Saylor in his drama group, in his performance, he always used to tell us, to not just memorize the lines, but to actually be the characters. It's fine and dandy that you know the lines. That's great. That's spectacular. But part of acting isn't just reading the lines. It's about being the character. That should be top priority. If you flub a line or two, doesn't matter. Just stay in character. Well, in The English Patient, that is exactly what Ralph Fiennes, Kristen Scott Thomas, and the rest of the ensemble did. And they pulled it off very, very effectively. Of course, it takes a good director in Anthony Minghella to actually get these guys to do it. But they do it, and they do it very, very effectively. And that's what they need. And, even though he's been long gone, his movies that he has done over the years, he gets his performers to not just say lines off of a piece of paper. You have to eat, breathe, and sleep the roles that is given to you. Otherwise, you might as well just go to a convention and present yourself. Acting has more universe. All right, so we have the opening scenes. They are set in World War II, as we see a fighter plane from Great Britain being shot down in the deserts of North Africa. The plane is led by a Hungarian count named Laszlo Almásy, played by Ralph Fiennes, who, although survived the ordeal, but suffered terrible wounds. The reason why he was in the deserts of Egypt and Libya is because he's part of the Royal Geographical Society, and he's by profession he's a cartographer, which means that he studies maps, and his initiative was to map out the Sahara Desert. Unfortunately, enemy planes shot them down, and most did not survive, and he just barely survived, but he had suffered some terrible wounds. Cut to a few years later, we're going to see, of course, this movie definitely depends a lot heavily on flashbacks, but we'll get to that a bit. Cuts to about 3 years later, in 1944, we once again meet Laszlo. This time he is in Italy, and although the wounds that he had that was given to him have kind of healed up to its capacity, but happiness isn't going his way. 3 years later now, he is terribly ill, and his illness had led to memory loss. He has gone dementia. So he is escorted by a French-Canadian nurse named Hannah, played by Juliette Binoche. She escorts Laszlo to a secluded, I guess you could say an abandoned cathedral or a church. And she is, still under his, she's under his care, but she decides to just leave the guy there to live out his last days. She, of course, nurtures him in any way, shape, or form, and she tries to do everything in her power to win back his memory. She reads passages in the Bible or things like that, which tries to get him to sort of jog his memory. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't the Bible. It was some author, a Greek author. That's it. That's what it was. It was a Greek author that that she was reading passages off of them, and she was just trying to do everything she can to get his memory back. That's what she was trying to do. Now, Hannah is, I guess you would call, a hopeless romantic because of the fact that she has kind of stopped falling in love with people, because it seems like every person who she has fallen in love with in the past has either died out on her. So she's kind of like weary about making commitments, which is kind of sad. But then again, when you want to know something, if this is not exactly what you would call a feel-good movie by any chances, there's going to be a lot of tearful moments in this. It might be a little overkill, but then again, when you think about the length of the movie, it's 2 hours and 42 minutes long. If there's a Kleenex box nearby, that would be quite sufficient. Anyhow, yeah. Okay, the actual author was Herodotus. Yes, he was reading volumes from his favorite author, Herodotus. That's what it is. Hana is determined to regain Laszlo's memory back. They are not alone in this church, as companies started coming, and such company also includes a crippled soldier, a Canadian soldier from Montreal named Caravaggio, played by Willem Dafoe, whose agenda remains esoteric, and 2 bomb analysts, which include Sergeant Hardy, played by Kevin Whatley, along with his Sikh assistant, who went by the name of Kip, played by Naveen Andrews, who eventually shows more romantic interests towards Hana. And you know, even though this angle between Kip and Hana are not the focal areas in this film, I still wish that they would have had more scenes together, because I kind of felt bad for Hana, in the situations that she has had to endure in the past, and I hope that one of these days she and Kip could get together. But because his job, being a guy who detonates bombs, or he of course has a very, very dangerous profession. So she also sometimes is worried that even some of the trained professionals could meet their fate. So there is a lot of grief in this movie, make no mistake about it. But it does tell the story, and it does it very, very effectively. The story is definitely executed through a series of flashbacks, and it is used quite a lot in this movie. But it is used in an effective way, because that's the way Elliot tells the story. I mean, obviously Laszlo is trying to regain his memory. And as these flashbacks come by, it pieces the puzzle together. And that is one of the idiosyncrasies as to why this film is so effective. Some people might think flashbacks are annoying. In a lot of cases, they are. But here, it's willing to make the exception. And if you could accept that, then I guess you could say Mangello and company are doing their jobs. So the story is definitely executed through flashbacks and used effectively. Laszlo starts to make progress in his memories, although Caravaggio, he believes that Laszlo is not an amnesiac, but he simply just wants to forget what really happened. He's not telling the inside story. And Caravaggio would like to do anything in his possible way to actually expose who Laszlo really is. Now you see, Caravaggio is also wounded because the poor guy only has one hand, but he still has another. And on a positive note, if you can say positive about this, is that he is right-handed and that it was his left hand that was taken off. But he is right-handed, so his right hand is still handy, no pun intended. Believe me, no pun intended. And he can use a gun nevertheless. He wants revenge on Laszlo because Laszlo took a part of him. Now he wants to get even because it was Laszlo's responsibility as to why Caravaggio is missing a hand. That's the reason why he is out to expose this guy and is out for vengeance. The whole eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth cliche. C'est la guerre. I mean, I don't want to actually quite dismiss Caravaggio by saying that the guy is a villain, but also at the same time, I can understand that, he's lamented, he's upset, and that's understanding. But he also has to take into consideration that Laszlo doesn't have long anyway. So if you shoot him, it's practically null and void. And Laszlo tries to at least come to an agreement that whatever's done is done. And if you shoot me, you're not going to make things any better. It's just going to get worse. You're probably going to get thrown into a prison camp. You're mad at me, and maybe you may not find forgiveness in your heart, but at least just let me live for as long as I have. Or, in his case, in whatever short time the gates open, so to speak. The story definitely shifts between the present and the events that happened during the 1930s and 40s when Laszlo was on the map-making mission while on assignment in the Sahara. That was, of course, where he meets Catherine Clifton, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, whose husband, played by Colin Firth, is part of this initiative. This sets the bar for Laszlo and Catherine to fall head over heels with each other while in the midst of some serious Nazi ruthlessness. So, okay, so we're kind of a bit here in a crossroads situation. You see, on the one hand, we're taking a lot of pity and sympathy for Laszlo because, he's on his deathbed. And it's, just a matter of time. But at the same time, we know that there is a lot of fishy things going on with this guy. I mean, in some ways, you cannot take too much sympathy for him because, he ends up falling in love with this Catherine Clifton, and it turns out that she's already a married woman. So in other words, are we actually taking sympathy for a dying man or for somebody who's committing an act of adultery? It's really, really, like I guess you could call it a catch-22. Something like we could get caught off guard with. It's your call. If there is an actual red herring about the English patient, is that Laszlo's dying scenes are not as etched out as his flashback scenes. And maybe that could be an understanding because, let's face it, some of the times that, when he's on his deathbed, he does, and it might be naturally saying that, he's at times a bit incoherent. But then again, the guy is all, disheveled, His wounds look like crocodile skin. He's got this kind of leathery approach. And, because, he's kind of suffering from dementia or amnesia, he's, not, coherent right now. And his dying, but still, the flashback scenes are really what tells the story, because they bring a bit more and more of a disclosure of this whole mystery of Laszlo Diamasi and how he went from being a top-notch cartographer to a guy who's dying in an abandoned church in complete isolation with just a nurse and some guy who's out for revenge. The romantic entanglement between Hannah and Kip is way, way too underdeveloped. I mean, as I mentioned it before, this is mostly due because they just simply aren't fleshed out characters. And even though, even though Juliette Binoche plays her role very, very effectively, I still just think that maybe she wasn't really the right actress to win the Best Supporting Oscar. And then I think maybe Kristen Scott Thomas should have gotten that award instead. And this is not to put Binoche down. She was effective in her role, but it was still underdeveloped. And I think I probably would have just wanted to see more of Hannah and Kip as they progress. And I think that's kind of like what was missing. Therefore, the scenes in the present are really just there for filler. Performance-wise, Ralph Fiennes is excellent as Laszlo. Another film where Fiennes truly likes to challenge himself. And here, he's just, put to the test in a very complex role as a strong, introverted type until the right woman comes along and sweeps him off his feet. Kristen Scott Thomas, definitely she shines as Laszlo's love interest, as she conveys beauty along with just the right amount of poise and energy that Laszlo finds hard to resist. Yes, they're both committing adultery, but you do have to admit there was a lot of good chemistry between them, which is very effective and apropos for a romantic drama. This is not a war film. Though it's set in the war, there was really no war action. Though her role was minimal, like I said, I have nothing against Juliette Binoche. Binoche is still effective in her performance as Hannah. Willem Dafoe, he adds sort of the right amount of intensity in his performance, like he does in all his movies, and he's pretty much good at it. Rounding out notable supporting performances are Naveen Andrews as Kip, who has to deal with a pretty dangerous job that could also risk his life. We also have Colin Firth as the misfortunate married man of Catherine, who takes the adultery between Catherine and Laszlo very, very sensitively, I mean, he went from being Laszlo's best friend in the world to almost becoming his bitter enemy, which unfortunately led to his death. And then we also had Julian Wadham as Laszlo's friend Maddox. They also turned in some pretty fine supporting roles there, and they are very effective in them. It's definitely rare to find intelligent, epic, romantic tales play out so convincingly these days. Most of them seem to run under cliche or just, Hollywoodized stuff. And, it could have done that. I mean, that sometimes goes to show you that maybe Hollywood is running out of ideas, or people just think that, if you recycle an old idea and bring it in and make it feel like new, that people won't see through it. Well, ding dong, you're wrong. We do see these things. We are observant. Not all moviegoers are stupid. They might like to think we are, but we're not. The thoughts drawn out in this movie will likely have a lingering effect on the viewers once the credits roll. It's one of those films that hits you when you watch it, and it hits you once the film ends. Definitely the film came out at the right time during the awards season, and rightfully so after spending 8 months with bad to mediocre films. Because, during the 8 months of the year, most movies are pretty much bad or mediocre. But when it comes to around awards season, that's when the more serious inclined films start to materialize. This film really, truly is great to watch. I highly recommend it. If I was to give a score of this movie, except for that one little flaw, one little faux pas, out of a scale of 10, I give The English Patient a 9 out of 10. It's a really good movie, and I highly recommend that you guys see it. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember one thing, okay, guys? Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carrutt Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.